The morning began like many others on the ranch. Slow and quiet, wrapped in the soft light of the rising sun. The rancher woke before dawn, as he always did. His body trained by years of routine, he washed his face with cold water, pulled on his worn boots, and stepped outside. The land stretched wide in front of him, golden fields meeting the sky. The air smelled of dust, grass, and early dew. This land was his whole world. It had been for a long time. He lived alone on the ranch. His days followed a steady rhythm, feeding the animals, fixing fences, checking the water lines, and walking the fields. He did not mind the silence. In fact, he welcomed it. After everything he had been through in life, the quiet felt safe. It asked nothing from him and judged nothing about his past. The ranch did not care about regrets or memories. It only demanded work, and he was good at that. As the sun climbed higher, he finished his morning chores and poured himself a cup of coffee on the porch. He sat down on the old wooden chair, letting the warmth of the cup seep into his hands. From where he sat, he could see the long dirt road that led to his ranch. No one used it often. Most days, it stayed empty from sunrise to sunset. That was how he liked it. But that morning, something was different. In the distance, far down the road, a figure appeared. At first, he thought it might be a trick of the light or dust blown by the wind. He narrowed his eyes and leaned forward. The figure was moving slowly, step by step, as if every step took effort. As it came closer, he realized it was a woman. The rancher stood up. Visitors were rare, and unexpected ones were even rarer. He felt a small knot of caution tighten in his chest. He did not rush toward her. Instead, he waited, watching carefully as she walked closer. The woman looked exhausted. Her clothes were dusty and worn, as if she had been traveling for a long time. Her hair was messy, tied back in a loose knot that kept slipping free. In her arms, she carried a large sack, gripping it tightly as though letting go would be unthinkable. The sack looked heavy, and her arms trembled from the weight. When she was close enough for him to see her face clearly, he noticed the fear in her eyes. It was not the kind of fear that fades quickly. It was deep and constant, the kind that comes from being chased by worry for too long. Her steps slowed as she reached the gate, and she paused, catching her breath. "Please," she said, her voice low and shaking. "Please, I need help." The rancher did not answer right away. He studied her carefully. Years of living alone had taught him to be careful. He knew that not every story was simple, and not every stranger came with honest intentions. Still, something about her did not feel false. Her fear was too real, her exhaustion too deep. "What brings you out here?" he asked calmly. She swallowed hard and glanced back down the road, as if expecting someone to appear at any moment. Her grip tightened around the sack. "I can't stay long," she said. I didn't know where else to go." The rancher opened the gate slowly, keeping a respectful distance. "You're a long way from town," he said. "Most people don't come this way by accident." She nodded, tears gathering in her eyes. "I know. That's why I came." There was silence between them, broken only by the sound of wind moving through the grass. The rancher felt a strange pull in his chest, something he hadn't felt in years. It was the quiet urge to help, even when helping meant stepping into something uncertain. "What's in the sack?" he asked, his voice steady but curious. At his question, her face tightened. She shook her head quickly. "I can't explain everything yet," she said. "But please, just take a look inside. Please." The way she said it like a plea rather than a request made his heart beat faster. He looked at the sack again. It wasn't moving, but it was tied carefully, as if whatever was inside mattered deeply. He felt the weight of the moment pressing on him. Opening that sack could change things. He knew that without understanding why. "I don't usually get involved," he said honestly. "I live quietly. I keep to myself." "I understand," she replied quickly. "But I wouldn't ask if I had any other choice." Her knees seemed weak, and for a moment, he thought she might fall. Without thinking too much about it, he stepped forward and steadied her with one hand. She flinched slightly, then relaxed when she realized he meant no harm. "Come," he said. "Sit down for a moment." He led her to the porch and offered her a chair. She sat carefully, keeping the sack close, as if afraid someone might take it from her. He poured her a glass of water and handed it to her. She drank slowly, her hands still shaking. "Thank you," she whispered. The rancher sat across from her, watching quietly. He noticed the small details, the way she kept listening to the road, the way her shoulders were tense, the way she avoided meeting his eyes for too long. This was not a woman looking for trouble. This was someone running from it. "You don't have to tell me everything," he said after a moment. "But you should know. Once I open that sack, things won't be the same." She looked at him then. Really looked at him, as if searching his face for honesty. What she saw must have given her some comfort, because she nodded slowly. "I know," she said. "That's why I chose you." He stood up, took a deep breath, and reached for the sack. His hands paused just above the rough fabric. For a brief second, he wondered if he should stop. Life on the ranch had been simple and predictable. This moment threatened that calm. But then he remembered something he had learned long ago. Some moments do not give you time to decide who you are. They simply ask you to act. He loosened the tie and began to open the sack. Just as he did, the woman leaned forward, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Please, be gentle." The rancher nodded, unaware that this single action was the first step into a story far bigger than either of them had imagined. A story that would test his courage, his kindness, and the quiet life he thought he understood. The rancher's hands slowed as he finished opening the sack. He did not rush. Whatever was inside felt important, and the woman's words echoed in his mind. He looked up at her once more before fully opening it. Her face was pale, her lips pressed together as if she was holding back tears. She nodded slightly, giving him permission without speaking. Inside the sack was something fragile and alive, something that instantly changed the air around them. The rancher felt his breath catch. He had expected many things, but not this. For a moment, he simply stood there, unsure what to say or do. The woman watched him closely, her whole body tense, waiting for his reaction. "I didn't want it to come to this," she said softly, "but I had no other choice." The rancher slowly closed the sack again, careful and gentle, then placed it on the table beside him. He sat down heavily in his chair. His quiet morning had turned into something he never could have imagined. "You should start from the beginning," he said calmly. "Whatever you're carrying, it brought you here for a reason." She took a deep breath, as if gathering strength. Her eyes drifted toward the open land beyond the porch, then back to him. "I was not always running," she began. "I had a normal life once. Nothing special, but it was peaceful. Then one mistake changed everything." She explained how her life had slowly fallen apart. Trust had been broken. Promises had been made and then ignored. She had believed in people who showed kindness on the surface, but hid their true intentions. When she realized the truth, it was already too late to step away safely. "The moment I tried to leave," she said, her voice shaking, "I knew I was in danger." The rancher listened without interrupting. He had learned long ago that people spoke more freely when they did not feel rushed. He noticed how carefully she chose her words, avoiding certain details, as if speaking them out loud would make the fear return. "I couldn't go to anyone," she continued. "Friends were too close to the situation. Authorities wouldn't understand without proof, and getting proof would put me at risk. So I did the only thing I could do." She looked down at the sack. "I protected what mattered most." The rancher leaned back in his chair. He felt the weight of her story settling over him like a heavy blanket. He understood fear. He understood what it meant to lose control of your own life. There had been a time when he, too, had run from pain, from memory, from people who expected too much. "How did you find this place?" he asked. She managed a small, tired smile. "Someone once told me that people who live far from the noise often have the clearest hearts." I remembered that when I had nowhere left to go. The rancher looked out across his land. He had chosen this life to escape the world, not to be pulled back into its problems. Yet, here the world was, sitting on his porch. "You're safe here for now," he said after a long pause, "but you can't stay afraid forever." She nodded slowly. "I know, but I just needed time. Time to think. Time to breathe." He stood and gestured toward the house. "You should rest," he said. "You look like you haven't slept in days." She hesitated. "I don't want to cause trouble." "You already walked all this way," he replied gently. "The least I can do is offer a place to sit and some food." Inside the house, the air was cool and still. The rancher moved around the kitchen with quiet efficiency, preparing a simple meal. The woman sat at the table, keeping the sack close to her feet. She watched him with cautious eyes, unsure whether to fully trust his kindness. When he placed the food in front of her, she stared at it for a moment, then slowly began to eat. Each bite seemed to bring her back to herself. Color returned to her face, and her hands steadied. "Thank you," she said again. "You don't know what this means to me." "I know more than you think," he replied. As the day moved on, the rancher showed her a small room where she could rest. It was simple but clean, with a window that looked out over the fields. She placed the sack carefully beside the bed and sat down, exhaustion finally catching up to her. Before leaving the room, the rancher paused. "No one comes out here without reason," he said. "Whatever you're carrying, it's part of your story now. And stories don't stay hidden forever." She looked up at him, eyes filled with fear and hope at the same time. "I just pray that when the truth comes out," she said softly, "it won't destroy everything." The rancher nodded. He closed the door gently behind him and stepped back onto the porch. The sun was beginning to lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the land. The ranch felt different now. The silence no longer felt empty, it felt heavy, full of questions waiting to be answered. That night, as the stars appeared one by one, the rancher lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. He knew this was only the beginning. The woman's arrival had stirred something he thought he had buried long ago. Whatever was inside that sack was more than a secret, it was a turning point. And deep down, he sensed that by choosing to help her, he had already stepped onto a path that would demand more from him than he ever expected. The next morning arrived quietly, but the rancher woke with a heavy feeling in his chest. For the first time in years, sleep had not come easily. His mind kept returning to the sack, to the look in the woman's eyes, and to the moment his hands had touched what was hidden inside. Dawn light slipped through the window, and the familiar sounds of the ranch slowly filled the air. Yet nothing felt familiar anymore. He rose from bed and went outside to begin his chores, hoping work would clear his thoughts. He fed the animals, checked the fences, and walked the land as he always did. Still, his mind wandered. Every sound made him pause. Every movement on the road caught his attention. He realized then that the quiet life he loved had already changed. When he returned to the house, he found the woman awake and standing near the window. She looked out across the fields, holding a cup of tea in both hands. She turned when she heard him enter. "I didn't want to sleep too long," she said softly. "I'm not used to feeling safe." He nodded. Safety takes time to believe in. They sat at the table together. The sack rested nearby, placed carefully against the wall. Neither of them spoke about it at first. The silence between them felt thick, filled with unspoken questions. Finally, the rancher broke the quiet. "What I saw yesterday," he said slowly, "it's not something you can hide forever." Her hands tightened around the cup. "I know. People will ask questions," he continued. "And when they do, they won't be gentle." She lowered her eyes. "That's what I'm afraid of." He stood and walked toward the sack. "Before we go any further," he said, "I need to understand the full truth. I can't protect what I don't understand." She took a deep breath, then nodded. "You deserve that." Together, they knelt beside the sack. The rancher carefully untied it again, slower than before. This time, he was ready to truly see, not just react. Inside was a tiny, fragile life, wrapped in layers of cloth for warmth and protection. The rancher felt his heart tighten. The truth was clear now, undeniable and powerful. This was not just a secret, it was a responsibility, one that could not be ignored or passed on easily. The woman's voice trembled as she spoke. I was asked to look after it for just a short time. That was the promise. But the people who made that promise disappeared when things became difficult. The rancher looked at her in disbelief. They left you with this? She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. They said they would come back. They never did. He gently adjusted the cloth, making sure everything was secure. Years of caring for animals had taught him how to be careful with delicate things. And when you tried to find help? He asked. That's when I realized how dangerous the truth could be, she said. Some people don't want responsibility. They want control. And once they knew what I was carrying, I had to leave. The rancher sat back on his heels, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He had lived a quiet life, far from complicated choices. Yet now, one of the biggest choices he had ever faced lay right in front of him. You did the right thing by protecting it, he said finally. She looked at him with surprise. You don't think I was wrong? No, he replied firmly. Walking away would have been easier. You stayed. That takes strength. Her shoulders relaxed slightly, as if she had been holding that tension for weeks. I didn't feel strong, she admitted. I felt terrified. Strength often feels like fear, he said. As the day passed, they spoke more openly. She shared more details about how she had moved from place to place. Always careful. Always watching. She described nights spent awake, listening for footsteps, holding on to hope that she would find someone she could trust. The rancher listened closely. He did not rush her or push her to explain more than she was ready to share. He could see that every word cost her effort. Outside, the wind picked up, moving through the tall grass. Clouds drifted slowly across the sky. Time seemed to stretch, as if the world itself was giving them space to decide what came next. What happens now? She asked quietly. The rancher thought for a long moment. Now, he said, we stop running. At least for a while, she frowned. They won't, he said calmly. This land is far from where people usually look, and I know how to keep things quiet. She studied his face, searching for doubt. She found none. You don't have to do this, she said. I never meant to pull you into my mess. He smiled gently. Life pulled me into worse things than this before. At least this time, I know why I'm standing my ground. As evening approached, the rancher prepared the house for a longer stay. He brought extra blankets, cleaned a second room, and made sure everything was ready. Each small action felt like a promise, even if neither of them said it out loud. Later, they sat on the porch, watching the sun sink below the horizon. The sky turned warm shades of orange and pink. For a brief moment, the world felt peaceful again. I used to believe kindness was rare, the woman said quietly. Now I think it just hides in quiet places. The rancher nodded. Quiet places give it room to grow. That night, the rancher stood by the window long after the lights were out. He scanned the road, listening to the sounds of the land. He felt alert, awake in a way he hadn't been for years. Protecting the ranch had always been his duty. Now, protecting the truth had become part of that duty too. Inside the house, the fragile life slept peacefully, unaware of the danger and decisions surrounding it. The woman rested nearby, exhaustion finally winning over fear. As the stars filled the sky, the rancher understood something clearly. This was no longer just her story. It was his now too. And whatever challenges lay ahead, turning away was no longer an option. The choice had already been made, not with words, but with actions, quiet and firm, just like the man who owned the land where fate had finally brought them together. The days that followed settled into a careful routine, but nothing felt truly calm. The rancher moved through his work with quiet focus, always aware of the responsibility now resting under his roof. Every sound carried meaning. A bird taking flight, a distant engine. Even the wind, brushing against the fence, made him pause and listen. He had protected land and animals for most of his life. But this was different. This required more than strength. It required judgment, patience, and courage. The woman helped where she could. She cleaned, cooked simple meals, and tried to make herself useful. Though the weight of worry never fully left her face, she often stood near the window, watching the long dirt road as if expecting it to betray them at any moment. Still, there were moments when she smiled, small and careful, especially when the ranch felt peaceful. They spoke often now, sharing pieces of their pasts in quiet conversations. The rancher told her about the life he once lived in town, about dreams that did not survive time and loss. He spoke without bitterness, but with honesty. She listened closely, finding comfort in knowing he understood disappointment and resilience. One afternoon, as clouds gathered low in the sky, she finally spoke the question that had been sitting between them for days. "How long do you think I can stay here?" Her voice was calm, but her eyes revealed fear. The rancher leaned against the fence, looking out at the fields. "As long as it takes," he said. "But staying hidden forever isn't a plan. It's only a pause." She nodded slowly. "I know. I just don't know what comes after." "That's what we figure out together," he replied. That evening, trouble came quietly. The rancher noticed fresh tire tracks near the edge of his land. Tracks that did not belong to any of his vehicles. They were faint, but clear enough to raise concern. His instincts sharpened instantly. He had lived too long out here not to recognize when something was out of place. He said nothing at first. Instead, he walked the perimeter, checking fences and gates, making sure everything was secure. When he returned to the house, his face was serious. "We need to be careful," he said. "Someone may be closer than we thought." The woman's face drained of color. "I knew this would happen." "Not yet," he said firmly. "Tracks don't mean danger. They mean we stay alert." That night, they spoke quietly, planning what to do if someone arrived. No panic, no rushed decisions. The rancher believed fear led to mistakes, and mistakes could cost everything. He explained where she should go if she needed to hide, how the land itself could protect them if used wisely. She listened closely, memorizing every word. "I never wanted to drag anyone into this," she said softly. "You didn't," he replied. "You came asking for help. I chose to give it." The next day passed slowly. The air felt tense, as if the land itself was waiting. The rancher worked near the house, refusing to leave it unattended. He kept his tools close, and his eyes open. The woman stayed inside, caring for the fragile life they were protecting, whispering gentle words meant to soothe both herself and what depended on her. Late in the afternoon, a vehicle appeared on the road. Dust rose behind it as it slowed near the gate. The rancher stood still, heart steady but alert. The woman watched from inside, breath held, fear pressing against her chest. The vehicle stopped. A man stepped out, dressed plainly, his movements cautious. He looked around, studying the land as if measuring it. The rancher walked forward, calm and controlled. "Can I help you?" he asked. The man hesitated. "Just checking the area," he said. "I heard someone might have passed through here." "No one's passed through," the rancher replied evenly. "This is private land." The man's eyes lingered on the house, then back to the rancher. "You sure?" "I'm sure," the rancher said. There was a long pause. The wind moved through the grass, carrying tension with it. Finally, the man nodded and returned to his vehicle. The engine started, and the car disappeared back down the road. The rancher did not relax until the dust settled completely. Inside the house, the woman sank into a chair, shaking. "That was too close." "Yes," he said. "But it also tells us something." "What?" "They're searching without clear direction. That gives us time." That night, neither of them slept much. The rancher stayed near the window, watching the road, while the woman rested lightly, waking at every sound. Fear hung in the air, but so did determination. By morning, a decision had formed between them, unspoken but understood. Staying hidden forever would only delay the inevitable. The truth needed a path forward, one that protected what mattered most without risking more harm. They sat together at the table, sunlight pouring through the window. "We need help," the woman said quietly. "The right kind." The rancher nodded. "I know someone. Not close, but trustworthy. Someone who understands responsibility." She looked at him with a mix of hope and worry. "Will they help us?" "I believe they will," he said. "But once we take that step, things will move quickly." "Mar, Apsi," she placed her hand on the table, steadying herself. "Then we should do it. I'm tired of running." The rancher felt a quiet pride in her words. Fear had not broken her. It had shaped her into someone ready to stand firm. As the day moved on, preparations began. Simple, careful steps. Nothing rushed. The rancher packed supplies, planned routes, and made sure the land was secure. The woman stayed close, focused and calm, holding on to hope with both hands. By evening, the sky turned deep blue, stars beginning to appear. The ranch felt peaceful again, but both of them knew it was a fragile peace. Standing together on the porch, the woman spoke softly. "No matter what happens next, I'll never forget what you did for me." The rancher looked out across his land, the place that had once been his escape and was now his stand. "Some moments change who we are," he said. In the quiet that followed, they both understood that the hardest part was not behind them. It was ahead. But for the first time since her journey began, the woman did not feel alone, and for the first time in years, the rancher felt his life had found a new purpose. Whatever came next, they would face it together, guided by calm minds, steady hearts, and the belief that doing the right thing, even quietly, still mattered. The final journey began before sunrise. The sky was still dark, and the land rested in silence. The rancher moved quietly through the house, checking everything one last time. He had lived on this land for many years, and leaving it, even for a short while, felt strange. But this time, the road ahead mattered more than comfort. The woman stood near the door, holding what she had protected for so long. Her face was calm, but her eyes showed how much this moment meant to her. Fear was still there, but it no longer controlled her. She had made her choice. They stepped outside together. The air was cool, and the stars slowly faded as morning approached. The rancher locked the door and took a long look at his home. He did not know when he would return, but he knew he was doing the right thing. The drive was long and quiet. The road stretched forward, empty and peaceful. Neither of them spoke much. Words were not needed. Both were deep in thought, aware that this journey would decide everything. After several hours, they reached a small town far from busy roads. The rancher parked near a modest building and turned off the engine. He took a deep breath. "This is the place," he said. The woman nodded, holding herself steady. "I trust you." Inside, they met a calm, kind person who listened carefully to their story. There were no rushed questions, no sharp reactions, only patience and understanding. For the first time, the woman felt truly heard. As the truth was shared fully, a heavy weight lifted from her chest. She had carried fear and responsibility alone for too long. Now, others were willing to help protect what mattered most. The process took time. Careful steps were taken. Nothing was rushed. The rancher stayed close, offering quiet support. He did not speak much, but his presence alone gave strength. By the time the sun reached its highest point, everything had changed. The situation was finally in safe hands. The woman felt tears fall. Not from fear this time, but from relief. "It's over," she whispered. The rancher smiled gently. "No," he said, "it's just beginning." When they returned to the ranch days later, the land welcomed them back with open silence. The fields stood tall, the fences strong. Everything looked the same, yet nothing felt the same. The woman did not leave right away. She stayed for a while, helping around the ranch, learning the rhythm of the land. The quiet no longer felt heavy. It felt healing. Slowly, laughter returned to the house. Simple moments filled the days, shared meals, peaceful sunsets, honest talks. The rancher realized something important. His life, once empty of connection, now felt full again. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the woman stood on the porch beside him. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. He shook his head. "You already have," he replied. "You reminded me why kindness matters." In time, the woman moved forward with her life, stronger and no longer afraid. She left the ranch with hope instead of fear, and a future that felt possible again. The rancher returned to his routine, but it was different now. He still worked the land, still welcomed the quiet, but his heart was no longer closed. He had learned that even the most peaceful life can hold purpose beyond comfort. Sometimes, late in the evening, he would sit on the porch and look down the long dirt road. He did not expect visitors, but he no longer feared them either, because he knew one simple truth: a single moment of compassion can change lives forever.